All right, please welcome Beatriz.
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I'm going to talk about how I learned English. How I learned English, right? Is it right now? Anyway. As some of you may know, I'm originally from Colombia, South America. And growing up, I remember we used to love the American music. And we used to sing, Thriller, Thriller, what's such a what's ration, on the night. But something didn't sound right, and I wanted to learn the right lyrics. So I started taking private classes in my teen years. My parents understood that to speak a language, you have to speak it. And so they decided to send me to live with some relatives in the States for 6 months so that it was a sort of improvised exchange student program that we did within the family. Today, I'm going to talk about the challenges I faced during that time and the challenges I face today using the English language. The first challenge I faced was the pronunciation. Spanish is a very straightforward language, like the people who speak it. Every sound has a character, and only a few characters have more than one sound. There are only 5 vowels in Spanish, and one of them is the vowel I pronounce E in Spanish, like the English E. But in English, there are 2 types of E sounds. There is the long sound of sheep and the short sound of ship. 2 very different meanings. But for the Spanish ear, they are the same sound. So here I was explaining to my cousins how in my native town, we used to go every Sunday to the beach. And that morning I had changed the ships. For some reason, I had also especially hard time with one particular word. I remember I could not stop their laughs when I would say, hey, why, I would love to go shopping at J.C. Penney's. Soon I realized I was doing something wrong, and I stopped counting peanuts and I started counting cents. The second challenge I had was adapting to the way Americans talk. People from Latin America are not politically correct in general. We call it as it is, and nobody gets offended. And I'm not politically correct in particular. One night, my cousin Steve invited me to go out with his friends and to go watch a movie at one of their houses. As I get there, I try to be as polite as I can, using the minimal amount of words that I knew in English. Suddenly, the guys get hungry, and they decide we should all go get some pizza. So in the middle of this cold winter night, we hurry up to the car, and we try to get in this small Volkswagen rabbit car. Remember those? So I take the passenger seat. My cousin Steve sat in front of the wheel. I look around and I see these 3 guys, big guys, like leaning against each other, and they were cramped in the back. And one of the guys was a friend of my cousin Matt, and I couldn't remember the name of the guy. And he was a rather chubby guy. So the first word that came to my mind to talk to him was to call him gordito. For those of you who speak Spanish, know that gordito means chubby, but it means more than that. Calling someone gordo, fat, or gordito, it's diminutive terms, it's an endearing term. Like, for example, couples, instead of calling themselves honey, they say, Gordo, can you please do this for me? It doesn't matter if the person is fat or not. They're always gordo or gordita or gordito. On top of that, in our culture, a gordito is usually this chubby guy who's super nice. He's happy all the time. He's the life of the party. He's a great dancer. Everybody wants to hang around with him. So nobody would get offended that they call him gordito. So I'm trying to speak, I'm trying to be polite, and okay, how do I talk to this guy? So in my mind, I try to do a little translation. Gordo, fat, ito, little. So I turn around and I say, hey you, the little fat guy. Of course, that didn't sound right. And as you can imagine, the guy got really offended, and even more so did my cousin Matt. After many anecdotes like this one, I finally learned English. The 6 months were over, and I went back to my country to study college. So I didn't have an opportunity to practice English for the next 5 years. Then in 1996, I decided to move to Miami, and I wanted to practice English again. So every chance I got to speak English, I would go up to people and talk to them in English. But you know, we people in Miami were very lazy with the English. And every time I would go to someone, regardless of how they looked, I would speak in English and the person would answer me back to me in Spanish. But I would persevere. I would keep on going. One day, take a break from work, and I decided to go to a toy store. And my work happened to be located in Hialeah. Now, as I'm paying, I tell the cashier, how much is it? And apparently she noticed my accent, and she states in Spanish to her coworker, no entiendo por qué la gente tiene que ser tan come beep. And they can't speak español, y no pueden hablar en español. So basically meaning, I don't understand why people have to be so full of beep and can't speak in Spanish. Working in news, I knew that 90% of people in Hialeah speak Spanish. What I didn't know is I was going to get insulted for speaking in English in America. So you see, when you're learning a language, you have to speak it. It doesn't matter if people laugh at you or get offended. You just have to practice, and practice makes perfect. Thank you.
Very good.